I was completely sad. I almost had a mini breakdown, I guess you would say. It was a break. I basically found myself crying in the kitchen going, who the fuck am I? Who have I become? This is not what I want to do. And I was like that for like the last 4 years. I kept thinking, oh man, this isn't really what I want to do. I don't like this. I don't like sitting. I mean, I like the idea of sitting around a table with other writers. I love that. But being told by lawyers that you can't do certain jokes, being told by producers that we're going to do this new story. I'm like, what about that new story? But I can't say it. You can say it, but it's not your show. Yeah, there's a lot of opinions, a lot of ego, a lot of stress. It's a very stressful environment.
With comedy, there's so much expressionism. You're the writer, director, producer, actor. Sure. You get to go there, do what you want, and then your passion, and then not just passion, but it's almost like in your DNA at that point, like what you have to do. All right, I'm here with Adam, Vincent, and like our other podcast, a long shot story. It's kind of like a long shot story almost, but here on the Stein Time show, we like to talk to comedians, and I like your story because it's most comedians. I have a joke, I was like, well, why did you decide not to be an actor, filmmaker, or a comedian? Why'd you start a business? I'm like, because I wanted to make money, and and basically. You had that nervousness for you. So let's go back into how'd you get started with your career? Where did it start? And then let's get into that moment when you kind of what that journey was like.
Okay. So, I mean, career didn't start for a while, but I started stand-up at 19. I'd always wanted to do it since I was about 8. And I think realistically, it was probably like a lot of comics would say for their, to get the attention of their parent, their father, or some kind of ulterior motive going on there. So I think that was it. And to this day, I kind of go, did I choose this, or did it choose me, or was it just something that happened in my life that sort of steered me in that direction? You know what I mean? But anyway, I started at 19, and I spent realistically the first 6 or 7 years not doing. No, it wasn't great. I did enough to keep going, well enough to keep going. But I got to, I would have been 26, 27, and I started looking around me and thinking, I think I can make a living for me, but if I want to have a wife and kids, I've got to make 4 livings, really, realistically.
Right.
I don't think I can do that. I don't know if I mean, maybe I could, but I didn't have the confidence to back myself. So I went to night school and became a registered nurse, which is
But you still did stand-up while you were doing this?
Still did stand up the whole way through. I didn't stop stand up. In fact, it probably, if anything, making that move helped my stand up because it gave me a different perspective. When you start studying, your mind doesn't want to study, so it goes off and starts writing material. So that was like there was a double. It was good for 2 reasons.
Right.
So it gave me a focus, which also gave me the anti-focus of going, I'm going to write material at the same time. Yeah.
So you did that for, I started when I was 19 also, off and on. I've done it off and on since. And, but you constantly were going up from the time you were 19. And how often were you going up between that point and when you started studying?
I started quite well. I started in Adelaide in Australia in a place called Comics Comedy Cellars, which no longer exists. It was run by this guy called Dave Flanagan, who would steal material basically, and he'd close every show. Yeah. And we all knew he was doing it, but it was his club. And we're like, as long as we can do our thing and you're confined to your club, what's going on? Is it hurting? And you couldn't bring it up because you wouldn't get the gig. If you said you're stealing material, you wouldn't get to a gig. And it's like, well, it's stage time.
That actually would be funny if he closed the show and did everybody or did like tags off of everybody's material that they did that night.
Oh, that would be very funny. Yeah,
that would be better. But
did Steve Martin do Things I Believe by Steve Martin? And then he did Things I Believe by Dave Flanagan. And he would end the show and he did he killed every, of course he killed. He had great material.
Right.
But he was confined and he's since passed away. So, there you go.
Confined? What do you mean he was confined? He was
confined to that club and to the corporate world. He would gig around in Adelaide, but he couldn't go anywhere because he'd get called out. You're stealing material. So, and in fact, he would argue with other guys who were also stealing material about who could still, he's from that older school where you pinch jokes, which is, a massive no.
Right.
Yes. He had one quality, and that was he gave me stage time. So
yes. So that's where you first performed. That place is now gone. So so then you start studying, and
well, no, I think before that, there's bits and pieces before that. I moved to Melbourne. I still gig all the time, but I think going back to what I first said about, you wanting a impressive parent. I'm from divorced parents, so I never really had I had a dad up until the age of 14, and then back in the 80s and 90s, you didn't see them like for 2 weeks. It's like every second weekend you get to spend with your father, which for me is insane now. That they just let that happen.
Same. Yep.
Yeah, it's insane.
No, the same with me. Yeah, same exact.
Oh, yeah, the same.
Yeah,
oh, right.
Parallels. You're parallel right with me right there. Say everything you're saying. Same with me. So go on.
Did you have the same thing where you were like you wanted older father figures in your life?
Yeah. Well, I always my dad was like Elvis, so I would look out at the front door. He was gone by the time I was 11, but I never got to see him. He was always like a Rolling Stone, but he was like a really good looking, successful guy. And then he lost everything. And then by the time I was 14 or 15, he came around again because he had no money, and he was like living in a van outside of our house in Encino, California. So it was just it's a weird situation, but there was a divorced family, stand-up comedy. You're trying to find your own voice, and that was your impetus.
Surrounding myself with older male comics who aren't always the best influence, right? Like I think I spent a time living with a guy called Jack, Canadian comic, Jack Smith. I don't know if he's listening. Alcoholic kind of guy.
Yeah.
And I, felt
that's what I should do. So were you like, that's what I should do? That's my destination. Maybe like that guy.
Yeah. Well, I was looking at going, I don't want to do that, but you're picking up habits, and not that I ever became an alcoholic, but I think there's a certain amount of when you don't have a sort of a dad in your life like you should, like every kid should, you try and father yourself, and you try and pick, okay, what qualities can I take from each person? And then I got to 26, living in Melbourne. I was in a bad relationship, and I thought, I want to improve my life. So I thought, I'm going to go to night school. I'm going to do this. I also went to the UK for a patch in 04, 05 for like 10 months, which was great because I saw the next level up for stand-up. Like, you got to work really hard. It's just a different vibe over here. And I was like, okay, great. So I came back and I just wrote prolifically. Just every day I started writing and working really hard at it. And I was getting much better. By that stage, I'm about 10 years in. I think I did Last Comic Standing right when I started this nursing degree at night. And I did this thing called Last Comic Standing, which they came to Australia and they said, you can do a heat and the best three will go to America for the semi-final. And they had all these, like every comic in Australia went to Sydney. I drove there that day with a couple of mates, and then I went up and I got through, and was
big show, huge show.
It was an all right. It was a weird vibe because it's they paint you a certain way, and there's no hiding from that. And I ended up I don't like looking at myself at the best of times, but I just looked like an autistic freak on that show. I didn't quite like it. But anyway, I did that. And then I did I had already started my nursing degree, had to pause that for 6 months and kept nursing. And that gave me this sort of changed my stand-up in a sense because I was working with death. People die. And so there's no denial with nursing. And I went from being this quirky guy who didn't really possibly understand his own voice to going on here. My background's from very brutally honest parents, and then when you're looking at people dying, you're like, well, this is who I sort of am now. I like to, talk about honest things.
So that definitely changed your writing because then comedy is the negative denominator of an anatomy of a joke, right? It's got a negative denominator right there in the middle, right? So did that negativity being around, that kind of that helped your writing, huh?
Yeah, it definitely but then it makes you brutally honest. And then what you forget is when you take that out into the world, people aren't ready for that. They don't want to know about death, and so you've got to learn how to frame it to sort of bring them in with the story,
right?
So they get it, or so at least so they don't get hit by it, where they were. This isn't funny. You're talking about death. So you got to ease them in, and then you got to learn about writing the skill of writing the joke that makes them laugh about the subject, you know.
So where are you at today? How many years have you been doing stand-up?
I started in 96. So realistically, what's that? That 20...
That's 13 years?
7 years, of which...
96. Oh my God. What am I saying? Yeah. That's
well, 27 years, but I'd say I was probably part-time for at least half of that. So, yeah.
Where are you at today with your career? What's happening?
Well, I actually feel like I've just started again, really, because when I moved to, my wife and I moved to the UK in 2011, and I fell into this job where I became a writer, TV comedy writer, for a show called The Last Leg over here, which was started in the Paralympics, where it was these, basically, the Paralympics being the people who are disabled get to compete. We had a late night show where we'd sort of document 12 days in London. It was in London in 2012. And it was so successful that it became a sort of satirical comedy show about the news. For some reason, they thought the channel went, this is great. You guys have got a great vibe. Let's put that in. We want to make it a weekly show about the news. So we did that. And I sort of fell into it. And before you knew it, I was like, oh my God, I'm a comedy writer. So I was doing nursing in England, doing stand-up and doing comedy writing. And eventually the nursing fell away because, you know, I was earning a good living as a writer. And then the stand-up fell away a little bit because it was like, well, every Friday night I'm doing this show. So, and I kept doing the stand-up, but I would do shows like I'd do in Edinburgh. I'd take a show up to the Edinburgh Festival for the month.
Right. Big film, big comedy festival. And what about writing? Is writing, you're able to make that, get more gigs and sustain that, or what's happening with that?
No, I stopped. I quit. I quit the show this December last year, which was like it was a big decision because I just didn't want to do it anymore. I didn't like writing about the news. It wasn't my thing. It was never my thing. I eased into. Right. And I kind of forgot who I was, and I wanted to get back into gigging more and, you know, doing more things creatively for myself, as opposed to writing satirical jokes about the news, which I could do, but it wasn't really my lane. I never felt comfortable in the role, ever.
You got to talk about money and sustainability because, you know, now when you did that, were you able to gigged more? Were you able to compensate to say, look, you know, I'm going to be able to double down more on my stand-up? Were you able to kind of, you know, compensate for the amount of money you were making for the writing and make more on stand-up?
No. No, absolutely not.
So that was a pure passion, you know, just for the love decision.
Well, it was, to be honest, it was more than that, because had I kept doing it, I think it would have destroyed me. Like I just was not, I was, you know, I was completely sad. Is that I just didn't enjoy the process. I didn't enjoy the, I almost had a mini breakdown, I guess you would say. It was a break. I basically found myself crying in the kitchen going, who the fuck am I? Who have I become? This is not what I want to do. And I was like that for like the last 4 years. I kept thinking, oh man, this isn't really what I want to do. I don't like this. I don't like sitting. I mean, I like the idea of sitting around a table with other writers. I love that. But being told by lawyers that you can't do certain jokes, being told by producers that we're going to do this new story. I'm like, what about that new story? But I can't say it. You know, you can say it, but it's not your show. So you're constantly writing about things you don't necessarily want to write about. And you're in there's a lot of opinions, a lot of ego, a lot of stress. It's a very stressful environment. And I think after a certain time, when you're just talking about the news, there's a certain toxicity that sort of comes into it. And I don't know, I've spoken to other writers and I feel there is, they agree. And you also become a bit of a fifth wheel after a long time. If you're with the one guy for a long time, you feel like,
right,
is my voice being heard like it used to be heard? And does that mean, and if it's not, should I be here? And of course you want to be here because of the money, but is that enough? That's
the nucleus of this conversation today. It's basically, that's kind of like your story. So, with comedy, there's so much expressionism. You're the writer, director, producer, actor. Sure. You get to go there, do what you want. Then there's the choice between comfort and security and trying to say, look, I'm going to do nursing or I'm going to do this. But then, the ultimate feeling is how much is that worth, So like and then there's that level of sustainability, and then your passion, and then not just passion, but it's almost like in your DNA at that point of like what you have to do.
But it's also like when I was doing the writing role, I was doing that job, and I was coming home and I wasn't a nice guy. I was sort of mirroring my environment. So I was coming home being that stressed kind of guy, unhappy, which makes my happy wife, happy life.
Right.
Or Nikki's not happy. Nikki's my wife. I'm angry at my kids. Why? Why am I taking myself so seriously? And is all this worth it? So I had a chat with her, and we basically said, you got to stop. I had 10 years as a TV writer. That's great. Most people would kill for that.
Right.
And I thought that's my role. And I was supporting the family. Nikki said, well, I'll go out and I'll get a job. And I said, well, I'll go back to stand up, and I'll really push it because I've always wanted to do that. And I feel like since I've made that decision, it's really, I'm gigging a load more. I'm sort of closing shows. I feel great. I feel really, really positive about it. The money's slowly rolling in to the point where it's not quite where it was, but we're close. And I'm happier. That being the main thing. I'm so much happier.
Yeah.
Who gives a fuck about how I feel? This is, people are going, I don't care. But
no, they actually do, because that's most people listen to entrepreneur podcasts or Stein Time show or whatever. It's about how, because I bet you people listening to this say, I want to be a stand-up. I want to be a stand-up. How do I make that feasible? What's the avenue? What's that guy's algorithm? How did he get to do that? What does that look like? What am I going to have to do for make it work for me? And you're another story that say, look, this is the reps that I had to put in to get to this point. This is the work that I had to do to get to that point, And the other thing I was going to bring up is your significant other. You're touring, local, albeit more like, but once you get better, how are you going to navigate that with, your wife? Because this is a single man's game, ideally, but unless you're a very special significant other. So how do you guys talk about that, when you're away so much?
Yeah, I'm lucky in the sense that Nikki, she was a stand-up for a while. So she knows the scene.
There you go. Yes.
She knows the scene, and she totally gets it. I was very clever. Married a comic.
That's perfect.
Yeah, it is. It's sweet. I'm very lucky that she understands. Mm-hmm. And being in the UK, it's not like in Australia. If you gig, you got to. If you say you live in Melbourne, you got to go to Sydney for 2 weeks, so you're away for 2 weeks. Yeah. Whereas in the UK, I'll drive for 3 hours. I'll do the gig. I'll drive home. And then the next night I'll do the same. So, and it's usually Thursday, Friday, Saturday. You're away, so it's not so. And you might do 2 shows on a Friday, 2 shows on a Saturday, and then you're back. And then you might get the old midweek gig as well. And then that's enough. So you're not away. You actually got, compared to a guy that's working 9 to 5, 40 hours a week. You're actually there a lot more. So she's cool with it.
Yeah, stand-up comedy though, most people just do not start off like, an overnight success is like several years, and then most comedians put in a lot of time, and then they start to hit critical mass. So let's say, this latest leg that you're on, you hit critical mass, and then you got to travel outside of UK. You're going to have to, but she's a stand-up. She's going to understand that. She, what is she tied into her own job? Will she be able to travel with you sometimes, or pretty much she's landlocked?
Are you telling me to leave my wife? Is that what you're saying? Is that what you want?
No, I'm trying to be the therapist here that's going to keep it together. Ooh,
no.
I did. Yeah.
I think I'm at an age where I'm 47, but
you look like younger. That's good. That's good for career.
Yeah, well, I don't. Yeah, I don't think about those things, but
well, you think about getting more gigs.
I do think about getting more gigs, but there's
your youthful look. Not that we're not expecting you to look like Matt Rife, but you do look a lot younger.
Matt Rife, yeah,
you're a phenomenon. That guy.
I heard about him, but I haven't seen him.
Wasn't bad enough that when I started stand up, comedians look like Rodney Dangerfield. Now this guy, you got to have abs and shit. It's like not hard enough to write jokes. You gotta look like a fucking model, but now it seems like it's unbelievable.
I mean, I'll go to the gym for longevity, but I don't give it. From the neck upwards, I don't really care. I've got to keep my legs. If I can keep my legs, I'll be happy.
So you want to get more good. Now that's what, as we close, I want to know what's the long-term plan to try to get to expand the career, to grow it. What was that even your plan? Or just to say, no, man, I just want to have a steady situation here in Great Britain? Or what's the plan?
My plan is just to keep going. I think you just want to work at becoming a better stand-up. That's always the plan. Get 10% better every year. Just keep improving. I look at it like sport in a way. You see these guys like, I think of, let's say because you're in America, let's go neutral sport, which both countries play, tennis. I don't know if you follow the tennis, but you've got these a little bit. Like I don't really do baseball or football, but you don't do cricket, do you? You wouldn't have a clue what cricket is.
No. Maybe if I'm in India one day and I'm like celebrating Diwali, it's like, let's go play cricket. But I do like McEnroe, those guys from those days. Like I like a guy that argues on the I like a spectacle.
You like a bit of pep from the player.
Drama. Yeah. I like I like a good car wreck on my tennis court. Yeah.
Like a Nick Kyrgios. Would you be a Nick Kyrgios guy? You know him?
I don't know. No.
You haven't got a clue. That's all right. Yeah. Well, I think, any professional athlete wants to perform at their peak as much as they can.
Right.
And want to keep improving. And I think that's, for me, like a long-term plan. I don't know, man. I wish if I was smart enough to have a long-term plan, I probably wouldn't, I'd be much further ahead than where I am.
Well, so a true stand-up comedian, I believe, has to be kind of Zen-like, and that you have to have that walk that, in the moment kind of, path, and just constantly, you're right. And that is a level of success though. Constantly just small percentages, getting better every step of the way, not trying to bite off a big piece of the elephant.
Well, it's just about, getting improving and getting used to and enjoying the process. I think that's the most important thing. Like I know that I've got to get better on social media, and that's a big, if you started before the internet, that's a big jump, especially, and it's getting much faster, and you've got to learn to adapt. And that's a game in itself, aside from the actual getting better on stage. It's like, that's almost just as important now. And to get your head around that, I'm just going to, I think you mentioned before we started, you've got a virtual assistant, which, you're leagues ahead of me.
That's for business, really, and for the podcast.
I've been emailing someone from you, and I've actually thought it was a real person. I've been trying to be nice in the email, but they don't give a shit. They're virtual.
If you could, make enough money in your stand-up where you have a team like of virtual assistants, well, God bless you, man. That's great.
Well, I think that's a thing, though. I was listening to a podcast. AI, is yours an AI virtual assistant? Is that?
No, I run a business, so I have, a virtual assistant team for my business. And then also I do, the podcasting, which, part of that team will do, edit videos, prepare.
Oh, so they're real people. It's not like I'm.
No, real people. I try to automate what you can, like when this is people in the inside of my process, like if you we approach, people want to be on the show, we'll sell them, a virtual assistant will send them an invitation, and it has all the information that they need to know, and has a Calendly link, which they could just sign up, and then they automatically are scheduled in when they do their bio, and we're good to go right there. And it's I try to automate as much as I can. Whatever I can automate, I'll try to leverage.
That's why I thought you were some elaborate hacker and just wanted my bank details.
Because it's pretty much automated, and I gotta, you gotta try to save as much time. It's all about.
I think it's a great thing. I mean, and that is something that I think all comics we are going to have to do. Is we're going to have to go down that road. Yeah. But again, it's for me, it's right now. It's just I want to keep getting as good.
You're a purist. You're and you're before the internet. When you started, so then you're not thinking about social. But even back then, you would you would call everybody on the phone, or call you every list or whatever,
Well, and the difference was back then you were trying to be chosen. You wanted to be chosen by a TV personality. You wanted to be picked. And now you can go, no, I pick me. I've always picked me. I'm just wanting you, I'm going to show you who I am. I don't need to wait for some exec to go, you can make your own, we've all got these phones now, so you can make your own show if you want to. There's nothing holding you back. There's a lot of noise, and that's something you have to fight through. But that's the difference, I think, is now the kids coming through are like, there's, look at, is it Schultz? What's his name?
Oh, yeah.
He's brilliant.
Andrew Schultz.
Andrew Schultz, he's brilliant.
Brilliant.
His marketing is next level, but he's
Yes.
stand up. He must have a team. He's clearly got a team behind him.
Now, probably, yeah.
But his stand up is brilliant. So he's doing both. He's playing both sides really, really well.
He is, and that's part of it now, I guess, isn't it? Like with anything, even in business, there's out here in America, there's a company called Black Rifle Coffee, and they basically were YouTubers. I think, hopefully, I'm not getting this information wrong, but I believe that they were YouTubers, and then they said, let's build a kind of a product after the fact, like let's coffee, to like sell because we're successful. Now it's like it's a publicly traded company. Yeah. So I mean,
they started as a podcast and then they went into coffee.
It started as a YouTube channel, like with just funny videos. And right. I think they were selling coffee. They said, let's sell coffee, and they needed to make money also. But it just blew up. But their forte was they knew how to make good videos. They knew how to like do it right in social media.
Right. There you go.
So something to be said about that. Maybe that's where we close on your where we leave you off. Say, that's part of your journey, Yeah. And now we can commence by telling everybody how they could find out more about you, so you can get more followers.
Okay. Well, can I say I've got a book out?
Nice. Well, there you go. That's a big feat.
That's a start, isn't it?
Yeah, that's a huge. It's huge.
Yeah, it's called "How Not to Kill Yourself When Living in the Suburbs." You can get it on, I believe you can get it on Amazon if you just type, How Not to Kill Yourself When Living in the Suburbs, or go to my webpage, adamvincent.com. It's on there. Click the link, see what happens. And, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram and all those things. And I will do my best to improve my social media game along with my stand-up game, and we'll see what happens.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing today.
Hey, thanks for having me, man.
Thanks for joining us. Gear up for your next adventure and head over to bolotour.com to check out the amazing Bolo Pack and their other innovative outdoor gear. Catch you next time.